Welcome to Outside the Box, a mental health initiative striving to end the stigma surrounding mental health. On today's episode, I'm in conversation with Sarah Soteroff, Senior PR Manager for Too Good To Go North America. Food waste is a big problem. Too Good To Go is the app that lets you rescue unsold food at your favorite spots from an untimely fate. You can use the app to explore stores and restaurants in your local area and save surprise bags of surplus food from going to waste at a great price. With the Too Good To Go app, you can eat well while making an impact. Hi, this is Outside the Box, and standing by to join me is Sarah Soteroff. She's with Too Good To Go, and I actually heard about Too Good To Go because Outside the Box is doing a lot of work around food waste. And for those of you who listen to the show, I've told my donut story. But one night, my daughter came home with a little bag full of all this food, and I'm like, what is this? She's like, oh, Too Good To Go. So I looked up the company, and I'm so glad Sarah could join us. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I love that organic introduction to the company. The best way, I think, for people to learn about us is through an experience like that, where you actually see the food, because the concept sounds so great, but when you see it in practice, it's really a kind of no-brainer.
Exactly. And so I want to start with, tell me about the company, because a lot of people have not heard about it.
Yeah, so we are the largest marketplace for selling surplus food, which really just boils down to if you're a restaurant and you have food left over at the end of the day, or you have potentially a return to order or something that you didn't sell, you can put it onto our app. The marketplace then allows the consumer to purchase directly via the app. So nothing is transacted by the store and by the consumer directly. And the restaurant or the store can pick a point of the day that they want to have that consumer come and pick up the food, typically about a 2-hour window. And they can put as much or as little on that they have each day. So if they have kind of an infrequency of surplus food, fantastic. They could just put on 1 bag a day. If they have pretty consistent amount of surplus every day, they can have a pretty automated amount. And then the consumer selects from that location. They purchase via the app. They go, they show their phone, they swipe, and they pick up. Everything that the consumer pays is 1/3 the retail cost. So you'll see 2 prices on the app. One is the original price, the value of what you're getting in the bag, crossed out, and then the value that you pay, which is 1/3 the cost. The reason that we do that is because the consumer has to go and physically pick up. We're not a delivery service.
Sure.
And it is intended to actually reduce surplus food. So it is really to reflect the surplus food that the stores have and allowing them to make some incremental revenue off of it, but not produce extra food for the sake of having surplus to sell. It's really to reflect what they have in store or at the restaurant level, and to allow them a way to not have to throw that out or to not have to constantly gift it to their employees who are probably sick of eating the same thing every day.
Right. So I have a question, because I started collecting excess donuts from a local donut store, and because one of the employees said to me they were very upset because hundreds and hundreds of items get tossed. Mm-hmm. So I was like Robin Hood. So now I have a Einstein Bagels is so wonderful here in Orange County in Irvine. They donate as often as I want to come out. They'll give me hundreds of items that are left over to donate. Wow. So I bring them to different shelters. Are there bigger chains that they feel like, oh, we don't want to do that because what if somebody gets sick? And you know,
it's a really good question. I think what you're kind of illuminating there is one of the big challenges that we have with the surplus food in general across North America. Wherever possible, we encourage our partners, if you have enough to donate, please donate first. Yeah. We want to be able to give them a way to make some revenue, because we know that food business margins are so tight. But if they have hundreds of donuts, for example, you shouldn't put that on the app. It should be a donation. If it's something goes wrong, sometimes you'll have products that they can't sell because the label is twisted or didn't print properly. And so that food is perfectly good to eat, but really it should be donated rather than not put on the app. The issue with donation is across basically every market, while each jurisdiction has different regulations, a lot of the food can't be donated. So if it's produced food, if it's a prepared meal, a lot of donation sites won't accept that because it has the potential for being contaminated, or it's not a raw food item. So we actually work with food banks and charities in every market that we're in. And our initial thinking when we entered into the marketplace was to say, oh, we'll gift you food from restaurants, so we'll connect you. And what we learned very quickly from them was they can't really accept food that's already produced. What they can accept is raw items. So if we can help to deviate some of potentially grocery raw items directly to them, that is fantastic. But there are so many regulations on what they can accept, in what state they can accept it, and then also taking on some of that responsibility from their end too. If that food goes bad, what do they do with it? The interesting thing about Too Good To Go, or the really innovative kind of concept there, is we basically fill the gap between those 1 or 2 items that you might just give away to an employee and that bulk amount that could be donated to a charity or a food bank. It's really for those kind of like 5 to 10 items where it's too much to throw away. You feel guilty doing it, but they can't be donated because it's either going to go bad that day or, really can't be consumed the next day. And then you still feel like there's value in this. Had it been sold 1 hour earlier, we would have made full price off of it. Why not put it onto the app?
Right.
I think the other really interesting thing about businesses who work with us too is they're still doing a lot of donations on their own, whether it's monetary donations to support their local charities or also larger bulk amounts. But what they're finding is they still have those 1 or 2 surplus items. And so there really is a need in the marketplace to have this kind of intermediary solution. It also helps people learn a lot about surplus food, the impacts of surplus food from a monetary and an environmental standpoint. So we support and love the work that every charity is doing to lower food insecurity. And we want to be able to basically work in parallel with them, but surplus food waste and food insecurity are kind of 2 separate issues.
Right. So when was this started? When
2016, we found it in Denmark. It's a bit of a 2-part question. So we started in Denmark. The app, it's actually started as a web page. So you can imagine who are physically going onto their computers to save bags. And then obviously we migrated into an app. We launched in the US in August of 2020. And when we say we launched, we really launched in 1 market. And then we slowly and kind of measuredly have expanded throughout the country. We're now in 14 markets in the US.
Wow.
We launched in Orange County and Southern California last year, toward the end of the year. And we are expanding. Today is actually our San Diego launch. So we are officially live in San Diego as of today. Next week we'll be in Sacramento. So we're slowly expanding throughout the country. Our goal is to be everywhere across the world, but it takes time to make sure we're matching both that consumer demand and the supply that we have.
Well, I find that your timing is fantastic because in the pandemic, so many people have been impacted in so many ways, especially financially. And whether you're a student, you could be getting a full ride to a college, but have food insecurity. You find out about Too Good To Go and fantastic,
Yeah, that's a really good point. I always say that we are really for everyone. I live in a city and I use Too Good To Go basically every day to supplement food that I'm purchasing full price. So if I'm having to make a grocery run, I'll make a list of everything I have to buy and I'll go save a grocery bag. And then anything I can cross off that list that I got from my Too Good To Go bag, it's kind of a bonus because I will have paid 1/3 for that. And then I can still go and do my grocery shopping for those specialty items or the things that I'm not getting in my surprise bags. But at the same time, we hear from students all the time who are using this as a way to, exactly as you're saying, lower their food costs. And then the creativity that we hear even from people my parents' age or people who are older than me, thinking through that they've been so creative in the kitchen and they've been so good at, prepping for a family. Maybe now they have fewer people to cook for, but they still want to eat fun, good food. And so this is a good way for them to either try out new places or have some variety in the food that they're eating. And so there's really a methodology for everyone to be using it. And I think it's really, it's a super fun way to go through the city or go through your area too and try out new places that you might not even have heard of, which is fantastic.
Okay, so you mentioned surprise bag, and I know a little bit about it. Could you share that?
Thank you for calling that a great point. So what we do, our kind of product is the surprise bag. What it does is it reflects the uncertainty of the food business. You don't know at the end of the day or past your morning rush what exact items that you're going to have. And a huge barrier to programs like ours for the businesses is usually that it requires a lot more time or maintenance or an employee to manage the uploading of photos or itemizing or scanning. What we do is we say, you don't have to itemize every item. You don't have to scan an apple and then a banana and then a croissant and put them in a bag. What you put on the app from the business perspective is the value amount. So say you have a bag for $28, you put that in and it can be filled with 5 croissants, 2 cookies, a sandwich, a loaf of bread, something like that. And then you're really just putting in everything that doesn't sell that day or during that period. There can be different categories. So as a consumer, you're not just getting like a total grab bag, but what you will purchase is the category. So it could be a baked good category, could be a grocery item category. It could be prepared foods. It can be beverages, anything like that. So you'll know it will be within that category, but the specific itemization won't be clear. And the really fun thing about that is my initial estimation before I worked for the company was, I want to know what I'm getting. And then I realized you have a pretty good idea based on what the business sells. The really fun part is now opening it. Like sometimes I can't even wait till I've left the store to open to see what I'm buying. And like,
You're like a little kid.
Exactly. It honestly is unsurprisingly like the most fun thing every time I do it.
Yeah.
But our Instagram is just filled with people sharing what they got. And so it does provide a lot of really interesting content for people to see. There could be times, and like the nature of food waste is obviously super unpredictable. So there could be times where you're getting something that you might not necessarily want, and that's okay. We don't really want people to be like, oh, now I have to overconsume everything I got. If I get a baked good item, it probably has way more bread than I'm going to want to eat, but I can freeze a loaf or take a croissant to work with me and give it out to one of my colleagues. Gift it to someone, if you're going away for a weekend or you're having people over for brunch or something. I have so many frozen croissants in my freezer that I just reheat, and they're super gourmet because they were from these great places. So they're just little things that you learn to do differently with that food after you have it. And what we're really trying to do is to be able to provide a seamless solution for these businesses so that they're not having to have a new POS system or add in a new employee who's now responsible for uploading all of those items. It's a seamless way for them to be able to increase their revenue off of this food that they've lovingly produced or purchased and that they would otherwise have to throw away. And then it also gives kind of that fun aspect for the consumer to see what they're going to get. And no 2 bags will ever be the same. So that's a really interesting treat.
I think it's great. Now, how do you feel seeing social media posts, just all the time, especially maybe from Gen Z?
Yeah, we love the content. We love our followers. We're super happy to be able to promote them and support the work that they're doing. It's also a really great opportunity for our businesses to see what other businesses are doing on the app, to see like the kinds of bags that they're producing. It gives a really good idea for the consumer to get more information as well, because when you save a bag, you might have a brief description, but because each bag is different, you're not going to know.
Right.
And I think this generation especially is so good at promoting and sharing and being so open with the things that they receive that it comes very naturally to them to share that. So if we can help to amplify those voices and then also use our social accounts to give kind of tips and tricks and facts about food waste, our ultimate goal is to eliminate food waste globally. And while we know there are some offshoots of that in terms of there can be money to be made for the businesses, there's money to be saved for consumers. At the end of the day, what we really want to do is lower the harmful effects of food waste on the environment. So if we can use fun, inexpensive food as our conduit into that message, it's a fantastic bonus for us.
I think it's amazing. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on is I started something called the CARE Initiative, and it stands for the power of connection, because people have felt very disconnected. Attention to mental health, physical health, emotional health, resilience, and education on issues that are really important, and homelessness, food insecurity, things like that. And you nailed it with what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. That's really wonderful to hear.
Yeah. So is there data on the website as far as, the impact of, what you're doing?
Yes, great question. We actually just launched our new brand, which came out last week. So the website's in a state of flux, but most of the information is still there. We have a couple of different education pieces that I can point people to. The first is to talk about the issue of food waste globally and in the United States and how it impacts the environment, the environmental impacts of that, as well as where the US falls. Globally, we waste around 40% of all the food that we produce. In different markets, that varies. In Canada, for example, it's 58%, which is insanely huge. Yeah. If we see in most westernized countries, we've had a lot of access to food. Food's been fairly inexpensive. We've been really lucky to produce probably more than what we need. As a result of that, I think we've gotten pretty, kind of disrespectful about food. We've lost where food has come from. We don't have that connection to actually making it or growing it or farming it like we used to. My grandma, I always tell a story. She emigrated from Holland, and every week they would get one chicken that they had to make last for 2 weeks. So she had to be a creative cook. They could plant and grow some of their own vegetables and stuff, but from a protein standpoint, they had one chicken.
Not a lot of food.
Not a lot of food. So she had to be, how do I make broth to make soup at the end of those 2 weeks? How do I use every bone? How do I use every piece of meat? And her connection to food was so visceral and so connected. But basically 2 generations later, I never thought of that. So I think the thing that we want to make sure people do is think really consciously about where that food is coming from that they consume and how they can really bring that affection back into it and the respect. Secondarily, we do an annual impact report. So our latest one actually hasn't come out for 2022 yet. Our 2021 one is on our site. But the really fun thing about Too Good To Go is every individual business can see their impact in real time. So they can see the impact of how many bags that they've saved every single day. And they can do that based on their CO2 emissions that they've saved. They can do it based on monetary amount that they've saved. And so they have an access to a portal that they can do it that way, which is really fantastic. We also share our global impact on our site and then our national impact as well. So those numbers are updated almost in real time every day. So almost in real time.
Amazing.
And what we want to do is really be able to hone in on that impact. So like as much as we love the monetary side of things, the environmental impact is really fantastic. We just surpassed a huge milestone for us globally, which was 200 million meals saved. And so
Sarah, what a number.
Yeah. And the thing that's really fun is the trajectory it took us to get there sped up so much that we think we'll probably get to 1 billion meals in the next 5 years, which is amazing. That's our target. So we're really focused on the impact. We know that the impact is a hugely important part of what we're doing, in addition to the fun stuff too.
Yeah. And circling back to what I just said and what you're saying, this really comes down to also impacting mental health, because we're in a mental health pandemic, right? Because if you don't have food, how are you functioning, And you're providing a way to really have people of all ages obtain food at lower cost. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a really good point. I think what we tend to maybe not focus on our day-to-day too is when we have access to food, it feels so easy. When we don't have it, it's the only thing we can focus on that day. So you're right, exactly. It deviates everything. You can't be successful, can't go to work effectively. You're probably not going to be a good family member or a partner or a parent if you're constantly thinking about food or getting food. We want to make sure that access to food is never limited by your income sphere or where you live. And the more that we can do to make food affordable and help people to have access to food that is relative to where they're, that they can walk to and pick up and also afford, the more that we can do with that. We will obviously need to expand and continue to permeate the areas that we are in to be able to say that we are everywhere, but that is coming and we are growing, and hopefully we'll be in every market that your listeners are in as well soon.
I think it's amazing because millions of people, as you know, lost jobs in 2020. Millions. I think the number was like over 40 million. And so if people knew about your app, that just creates a sense of relief and, an easier way to obtain food. How do people hear about it?
So we are available on the App Store and Google Play Store. So if you have a smartphone or a phone that can access the internet, very easy to access. It's free to download. We do a lot of press. We don't do any paid media. So we don't do any advertising. We don't buy any advertising. We do a lot of press. That's my job. I'm the PR manager for North America. So every market that we enter into, we try to share both information about the businesses who are joining us so that they can get some advanced and amplified messaging out there as well. And then also to share information about eliminating food insecurity. You had mentioned larger and either like chains or connected businesses throughout the country earlier. And that's a really helpful way for us to expand as well. Because if you think about, we love everything, every independent business that's on our app is a fantastic addition, but the way that we'll really be able to make an impact is to have grocery stores on there and things like Targets and Walmarts and things with those national reaches, because they also have so much additional food waste. And if there's, a way for them to also be able to share the message, that will help to get into some of those markets that we're not yet currently in. So we're growing at a clip, but it's going to speed up soon. And anything that we can do to share information, if we can use the news as a conduit to do that, if we can share helpful tips and tricks, that's what we're working on doing throughout the country.
Fantastic. Anything else you'd like people to know about Too Good To Go?
I think people think of surplus food waste as just happening at restaurants or when you order out, and it's really everywhere. It can be anything from a convenience store at a gas station to the, coffee shop that you frequent on your way to work. Everywhere has surplus food waste, and it's okay. There's no way to get that match of the amount of food you produce and then the customers you have exactly right. The question is, what do you do with it when you have it? And if you can find a way to ensure that it's getting consumed and that you're not wasting that food, please use us. If there's another way that you're doing it, please do that as well. And then thinking differently about the food that you have at home too. So I think we tend to think not of food waste that we throw out at home as having an impact on the environment, but it does. So if you have herbs that you can freeze, or if you have vegetables that you can make into something and then freeze and help to extend those lives, we have a lot of tips and tricks on our Instagram as well as on our website. And we encourage everyone just to think a little bit differently about the food that they're purchasing and then that they're consuming. And if you're a food business, join us. It's super easy. Just go to our website. It's toogoodtogo.com. Follow us on Instagram and download the app.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And congratulations. This is such a meaningful initiative.
Yeah. Thank you so much for helping us to bring attention to it.
Thanks for checking out this week's episode of Outside the Box. We're spreading knowledge and compassion through podcasts, social events, and resources. Outside the Box is committed to facilitating real conversations about real issues that people struggle with every day. I hope my movement will not only inspire you to seek the help you need, but also help you learn the importance of self-awareness, mindfulness, and self-compassion. Want to be a guest on Outside the Box? Drop us an email at info@otbseries.com. We drop a new episode every Thursday, and you can check out our socials at OTB Series. For more information, visit otbseries.com.